There comes a quiet moment, usually late in the evening, when the house is still, and the noise of the day finally settles. It's in that moment that certain thoughts show up. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, just gentle taps on the door of the mind. You might notice them while washing a cup that no one else used, or while looking at a calendar with more empty squares than filled ones, or while sitting in a chair that has slowly become your favorite place. Nothing feels wrong exactly, but something feels unfinished. You've lived long enough to know that life rarely announces its turning points. It just keeps moving quietly, patiently. And sometimes you realize that some things you thought you had plenty of time for somehow slipped by while you were busy being responsible, being strong, being needed. No one warned you that the hardest part of later life wouldn't be the body slowing down. It would be the mind looking back, not with regret exactly, but with questions. Questions you didn't have space to ask before. Was I careful in the right ways? Was I generous in the right moments? Did I hold on too tightly to things that didn't really matter? Did I let go too easily of things that did? Most people don't talk about these thoughts. They don't want to sound ungrateful. They don't want to sound worried. They don't want to trouble anyone. So they smile. They say they're fine, and they say they're lucky, and in many ways they are. But still, there's that quiet feeling. It often shows up when plans change unexpectedly, or when something small feels heavier than it should, or when you catch yourself saying, I'll think about that later. Even though later feels different now, you may notice a new kind of caution, not fear exactly, just awareness. You notice how quickly time moves now, how years don't stack the way they used to, how tomorrow doesn't feel endless anymore. And with that awareness comes something else, a sense that there are certain unspoken rules in life. Rules no one really talks about when you're younger. Rules most people don't notice until they're already living with the consequences, not because they were careless, but because they were busy doing what was expected, busy taking care of others, busy surviving and providing and showing up. You were taught how to work hard, how to be polite, how to plan for emergencies, how to be responsible. But you weren't always taught how to listen to yourself, not the loud voice, the quiet one, the one that notices when something no longer fits, the one that knows when enough is enough, the one that understands that peace is not laziness. You may remember times when you ignored a small discomfort because it seemed easier to push through, because everyone else was doing the same. At the time it felt like strength, and maybe it was, but strength has seasons. What protects you in one season can weigh you down in another. There are people who reach this stage of life and realize they spent years chasing stability, only to discover that stability without ease feels strangely empty. Others realize they were so careful not to burden anyone that they forgot they were allowed to need support too. Some noticed they saved their gentleness for strangers and gave their impatience to themselves. These realizations don't arrive all at once. They arrive slowly, often without words. You feel them when you hesitate before making a simple choice, when you wonder why a small decision feels bigger than it should, when you sense that peace has become more valuable than approval. And yet, letting go of old habits isn't easy. Habits form when they help us survive. They don't disappear just because life changes. There is a rule many people learn late, that being careful is not the same as being at peace. You can do everything right and still feel unsettled. You can avoid every obvious mistake and still feel tired inside. Another quiet rule is this: worry doesn't protect what you love. It only steals the moments you still have with it. Most people don't notice this until worry has been their companion for years, until they realize it never actually kept anything bad away. It just stayed. There's also a rule about waiting. Waiting for the perfect time. Waiting until things feel certain. Waiting until you feel ready. Later in life, many people realize that readiness rarely arrives the way they expected. It comes after action, after adjustment, after acceptance. And then there is the rule about self-trust, one of the most ignored rules of all. You spent decades learning how to trust systems, schedules, expectations, other people's opinions. Somewhere along the way, trusting your own inner sense quietly faded, not because it failed you, but because it wasn't praised. Now, when that inner sense speaks, it might sound unfamiliar. You might question it. You might dismiss it. But it has been with you longer than any rule you were taught. There comes a point when you realize that certainty is overrated. That clarity often comes in soft waves, not bold declarations. And this is where something shifts, not suddenly, not dramatically, just gently. You begin to see that many of the rules you followed were useful, but not permanent. You begin to understand that adjusting your pace is not giving up, it's responding honestly to where you are now. You start to notice that peace doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from no longer fighting what you already know inside. There is a quiet relief in realizing that it's okay to simplify, to choose comfort over impressing, to choose risk without apology, another rule reveals itself here. Your worth does not decrease when your productivity does. Many people don't learn this until they feel invisible, until they notice fewer people asking for their help, until they hear fewer demands. At first, that silence can feel unsettling, but later it can feel like freedom. You may notice that the most important decisions now are less about building and more about preserving. Preserving energy, preserving dignity, preserving peace of mind, and perhaps the most important rule of all becomes clear. Life does not require perfection to be meaningful. It requires presence. Presence with your own thoughts. Presence with your own needs. Presence with the moments that still arrive quietly every day. Many people reach this understanding and wish they had known sooner. But here is something gentle that often goes unsaid. Knowing sooner would not have made you who you are now. You learned when you were ready. In the only way humans ever do, by living. There is no punishment for realizing things late. There is only the invitation to live differently now. And differently does not mean drastically. It means kindly. It means listening when your body asks for rest, when your mind asks for calm, when your heart asks for honesty. It means understanding that adjusting course is not failure. It's wisdom in motion. You are not behind. You are not late to your own life. You are simply at a chapter where the rules become quieter and the listening becomes deeper. And if some rules were ignored until now, it's because they could only be understood with time. Time you have already lived. So tonight, or tomorrow when the house is quiet again and those gentle thoughts return, you don't need to push them away. Let them sit beside you. They are not here to judge. They are here to guide. And you don't need to rush to understand everything at once. Some truths unfold slowly, just like a life well lived.